Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be concluding our conversation on the presentation layer, specifically talking about JavaScript. So let's go ahead and get started. So very similarly to the CSS portion, JavaScript also has a number of portlet component properties that can be configured. We have the portal and the portlet JavaScript property associated with the header and the footer. Very similarly, as we talked about in the CSS portion, right, we have these JavaScript files that can inject directly into the header or the footer of either the portal or the portlet. Each one is relative to its own context path for the portal and the portlet. When we're serving the JavaScript files, they're going to be merged and minified during compile time, and then it's going to be served through essentially Liferay or the combo servlet. We have a couple of different examples here. We have starting off at the JavaScript files, very simple, just printing to the logs. We reference those JavaScript files within the portlet components properties attribute. So we can specify that within the portlet or the portal's header or footer, depending on what it is that we want to do. Ultimately, at the end, this is what the contents is going to be compiled as. So that's just a brief summation of how we're able to create those JavaScript files and then reference them within our portlet component. When we're configuring our JavaScript through Liferay, these are the properties that we're going to be looking for: the JavaScript, minifier, and combo. So those three respectively. When we're using JavaScript, we have a number of different options made available. Again, since we are pretty tool agnostic, you can use the tools that you prefer, whether it's Angular or something else. In Liferay, though, we have a number of JavaScript libraries that are already made available. Those are going to be jQuery, Alloy UI, and then Liferay's JavaScript API. So those are made available to you by default. Liferay's JavaScript library contains a number of objects that can be very helpful during your development. Here we have a list of the JavaScript objects that we're able to use. Right? Each one has its own specific use case to be able to manipulate or tap into specific things in the Liferay world. One example here is that Liferay theme display object. We can access it through our JavaScript. Here's one example here using the Liferay service. And a couple of other things that you would want to know in the JavaScript world, right? So Liferay does support ES 2015, so ECMAScript. NPM modules are also supported, and Liferay does have a built-in AMD loader. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. So we talked about a lot throughout these videos. Let's go ahead and sum up some of the key concepts here in the summary. So in modular applications, the presentation layer is usually located in the web module, delineated by that -web. The web module typically contains both the view and the controller layers. So the user interface, however we want to build it out, and the portlet layer. And that's typically how we're going to be doing it in the Liferay world. MVC commands are Liferay provided portlet handler components meant to be used in conjunction with Liferay MVC portlets. So recall, we talked about the MVC portlet class, how it reduces a lot of boilerplate code in order for us to handle the different portlet requests or portlet phases. We use MVC commands. There are three types of MVC commands: MVC render, MVC action, and MVC resource commands. So that wraps it up for the presentation layer, and I will see you in the next video.